Okay, so a gradient mesh like the one behind me is getting quite popular these days. I mean, we see them everywhere. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to create an animated gradient mesh in Figma. And we are specifically going to play around with the prototype tool. I'm also going to show you some extra tips and tricks that really is going to save you a lot of time. And by the way, gradient meshes are very popular in dark mode themes or when a website is built or designed in dark mode. Drop in your comments below what you think and where you've seen the gradient mesh. So with that, let's jump into it. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. I do post videos like this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And by the way, I am going to show you some bonus content at the end of this video. And it's all about shadows and how to create a modern shadow. So with that, let's jump into it. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Just a couple of things. I already created a navigation or a header bar, and this is essentially what we're going to use for our homepage slider or Euro slider, as well as some content. So I created some content on here just to kind of have something to play with. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the frame tool and we're going to select the MacBook Pro 16-inch. Now, obviously you can create or you can select whatever size or width or height you want to use. All right, so with that, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this full and I'm going to change it to a darker color. So I'm going to go around about here so that we can play around with this color. Now you're going to notice that the navigation or the header and the content also has a background color, but that is not important at all. I'm going to show you why. Okay, so first things first, we are going to take this and I'm going to change or rename it and I'm going to call it main screen. Just going to make sure I spell that correctly. Okay, so now that we have main screen, now the fun starts. So let's start off by creating a couple of blobs. Now I use a plugin. It just makes life so much easier. So I'm going to click on resources, go to plugins, and the one that we are looking for is Blobs. So what you could do is just search for Blobs and you'll see that it's right there at the top. So we're going to select that and a pop-up will appear. And so with this pop-up, we can create a couple of shapes that's really going to work for our gradient mesh. So you essentially have complexity and you have uniqueness. So I'm just going to kind of play around with the complexity to kind of get something that really looks good, and also with uniqueness. And you can also kind of reshape it by clicking that refresh arrow and it will constantly reshape something for you. So let's go and insert one, and let's insert the first one. I'm just going to drop it right there and click on the frame again, and we're going to insert another one. And oh, I do not want to move the frame. And that's one thing you're going to notice when you do stuff like this is sometimes you are going to move the frame. Now, with that said, we are going to create another one. So selecting the frame, and we're just going to hit insert, and just be careful because we don't want to move the frame about. We're just going to move this to right here, and I'm going to make it a little bigger as well. Actually, I'm going to make it bigger by holding in shift so I don't skew it. So I'm just going to move it to about there. Then we are going to do the same again. I'm just going to kind of play around with the randomize and get another shape. Select it, make it a little bigger by holding in shift, and maybe rotate it as well. The idea here is to really create some abstract shapes that's really going to help us. So I'm going to play around with the uniqueness and the complexity. And again, it's all about creating those different types of shapes. So I'm going to take this one and let's make it a little bigger, put it about there. Now I want something more simplistic, a little bit more smaller. We can move it to there. And let's get one more, insert it, and let's put it right there. Okay, now first thing is you are going to notice that as we dropped in these vectors or these shapes, it did not put it physically into our frame. So we definitely want to make sure that we do that. So I'm going to select all of them and we are going to move it into the frame. Oh, there's one more. I'm going to take that one as well. And once I've done that, I'm going to select all of them and we are going to group them together. And I'm just going to call this, for now, we're going to call it Blobs. Perfect. So this is step one of creating that gradient mesh. We just really needed some shapes to kind of play around with. All right, so the next step is now we're going to start adding the color. Again, I am going to use plugins for this. And let's start with the very first one. We're going to take that one, open up our plugins. Let's get rid of this Blobs. And there's two plugins I use for this. And that's UI gradients, and the other one is Cool Hue gradient color palette. So I'm going to start with Cool Hue just because they have very simplistic kind of gradients that we can work with. And let's start putting that together. So I'm going to take that one. We're going to put that gradient in there. I'm going to take the bottom one and let's get a purple one in here. The top one, let's go for something perhaps green. And this is it. This is the cool thing about this is you can always play around with the colors. Once you've even done this video, you can play around with the colors to kind of get something that really works for you. It's all about, using your eye and trying to get the perfect match. All right, next one, we are going to take a purple. This one, we perhaps going to move or select that one. And the last one, let's select green. Green is definitely not going to work, but the reason I'm doing that is just to kind of show you, you can select multiple kind of gradients within this plugin. Now, let's use my favorite gradient plugin, which is UI gradients. And let's perhaps kind of just finish this off with some cooler looking gradients. All right, so this green definitely not going to work. Let's go for something like that. And this one right here, let's maybe go for more of a reddish color. Red might actually clash with that one. So let's go for this purple right here. This one, I am going to go for a little bit more of a blue kind of effect to it. So I'm just going to scroll down until I find something that really looks good. That looks good. Okay, perfect. This one I'm going to change to that. And I am maybe potentially going to go for an orange here. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to take out one. I'm just going to move the gradient about a little bit here. So I'm just going to move this to here. And that's the beauty of this plugin is you can go and play around with those gradients until you get to a point where you really like it. All right, last one. This is purple. That one is purple. So let's change that up. I am going to go for something that is just a little different, maybe a little darker purple, or maybe something like this, or something like that. I like that. Let's go for that. Okay, perfect. So now that we've created our shapes, the next step is physically creating that gradient effect. So next up, we are going to take our main screen and we're going to minimize blobs here. And now we're actually going to go and activate an effect. And the effect that we're going to go for is, oh, I do not want to create a new effect. The effect I want to go for is layer blur. So now that we have layer blur, we can actually go and set this variable. I'm going to set it to 500. And there you go. You can see that we have that kind of mesh look, but I feel like 500 might be too much. So let's go for 250. And there it's starting to form shape. Excuse the pun, shape. And so you can see here that now we have kind of that effect, but we kind of need to fine tune this a little bit because I feel like it's not 100%. So going back to the blobs, we are going to move these guys about. I'm going to move this one to here, move this one up a bit, and maybe take this one and move it to there, and take this and move it out to about there. That already looks much better. I'm just going to move this guy here and we can see now, okay, cool. We have something that kind of looks good. I'm going to take this guy and make it a little bigger. Don't want to distort it for that matter, but we can see now that, okay, cool. That looks like a mesh gradient. Looks pretty cool. So the first step here is done and I just want to deactivate it. Looks like I activated grids. I just want to deactivate that. But now we created that mesh gradient that is super basic. It's super basic at this stage. I mean, we can still fine tune this. We can still move things about just to kind of really get that effect that we want or that we are looking for. We can also kind of send items to the back just to kind of make it a little bit more realistic. Okay, so that is our first screen. Now the next one, or the next step for that matter, is duplicating this and changing a few things. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a mesh gradient that's going to animate throughout everything, right? Okay, so with that said, we're going to take our main screen frame, we're going to hold in Alt, and we are going to duplicate it. I'm holding in Shift as well, by the way, just so that I can make sure that I am on the same X-axis. The next step here is I am going to rename it. So I'm going to call it second screen. Again, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just calling it second screen because I kind of feel like doing that. Okay. Now we're going to open up second screen. We are going to click on blobs. And now you have two options. Option one is you can reuse the blobs that you have, or you can go and create new blobs. You can create something fresh. But for the simplicity of this video, I am going to reuse the blobs that we already have. But with that said, let's go and deactivate the layer blur because we do want to move things about here. So first things first, we're going to move things about. So I'm going to take this one, move it here, take that one, move it over there. Maybe take this one there, this one over here, and this one here. Now, with that all done, with the shapes kind of moved about, I'm going to change some colors. So let's take this orange kind of looking color and let's change that perhaps to something a little bit more smooth. So maybe let's go for, I really want to push purple or pink for that matter, because I really feel like this color grade pink will really work great. So something like that maybe. And we are going to take this, bring it up a little bit more, take that and bring it more to pink, or to purple for that matter, and kind of push it towards that color there. This one I want a little bit more prominent to the red, so I am going to push it to the right here so we can have that red look and feel. All right, so now this kind of blob has that color, but it really looks similar to this one. So I'm going to be radical here, and we are going to change this gradient maybe to something green. Let's see how green is going to look like. I honestly don't know how it's going to look like, but that's the whole beauty of this, is you have to play around with it and kind of get your eye to kind of match what you're looking for. So I'm bringing in a little bit more of a green effect to this. And if you're following me on YouTube, you would know that I constantly go back and change things just because it's all about kind of tweaking. That's what design is all about. All right, so with that done, we're going to take the second screen, we're going to go to blobs, and we're going to activate that layer blur. And so now you're going to see we have a different kind of blur effect. I'm going to take this guy, move it down a bit. And with that, I'm going to take this one, make it bigger, and move it up. With that all said, I'm going to take this blue because I want a little bit more prominence of blue. I'm going to push that to about there. And that looks good. That looks good. When I look at the two kind of frames that we've created here, that looks pretty sweet. All right, so the next step, we are going to take this and we're going to duplicate it again, move it to the right-hand side. And now maybe I want to kind of mute down the colors. Let me show you what I'm going to do. So taking second screen, of course, we're going to rename it, and I'm going to call it third screen. And once the third screen is renamed, we are going to, as the last time, we're going to click on blobs and we're going to deactivate our kind of blur effect that we have. And now I am going to dial down the color. So to do that, I am literally going to go and make this 0. Make this one 0 as well. We are going to move this to about here. We're going to move that to about there and move it to about there. Going to increase this guy, just kind of move it down a bit. Take this and maybe make it a little bit bigger, holding in shift. I don't want to distort it. And we're going to move this guy down to about there. Okay, so that is going to be our third screen. I'm going to activate the blob effect again. We're going to see that now we have a more realistic feel again. So I'm just going to move these things about a little bit just to kind of give it that kind of cool effect. All right, so now that we've created our third screen, let's go and create one more screen. Let's go for the fourth screen, but I am going to take my original screen and we are going to duplicate it because I kind of want it to look similar. Once we start jumping into the animation here, which we're going to do in a sec, I want it to kind of match closely to this one again, because we are going to reset our animation to go back to 0 or go back to the first screen. But let's rename this. I am going to call it fourth screen. Now with that done, we are going to do what we did in the previous kind of frames or screens as well, is deactivate that layer blur. I am going to make this one a little bit bigger, this one a tiny bit bigger as well, this move it to about here. So this is the thing, I want you to play around with it, kind of use your own imagination when using or kind of creating these blobs, because there is no right answer. It's just the experience you need to gain to be able to know if this is going to work or not. Okay, so we're going to make this one bigger as well. Now with that all said, we are going to activate that good looking blur. Okay, so with that all said, we have 4 screens here. We have 4 screens that we can animate through. This is exactly what I wanted. So I'm just going to select all of them. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, kind of move this about, kind of move it to about there. Let's also just space it out just a tiny bit. I just want a little bit more space. And the reason I want this space is so that it's going to be a little easier dealing with that kind of prototype part that we're going to do now. Okay, so with that all said, let me show you the prototype part. This is where the magic happens. This is kind of where we take these gradients and bring it to life. First things first, we're going to click on main screen, going to prototype. We are going to create a new flow, and it's very important to set a flow, because sometimes when you start doing prototypes, and this happened to me in the past, is you kind of forget to add a flow. And then once you start viewing it, it kind of doesn't really fit well. All right, so we're going to go and call this main flow. I'm just going to call it main flow. That's probably the easiest way of calling it. And so the first thing here is, and this is one thing that kind of annoys me sometimes is their preview model. So you can set a preview. Because I am physically not gonna want to show this in a device, I just don't want a preview at all. If you don't go and set this to none, it will frustrate you a lot, that's for sure. Okay, so we disabled it. We have main flow. Now we're going to start connecting it. So one thing I want to do is I want to hover over this plus and I want to drag it to the second screen. When you do that, you're going to get a couple of settings pop up, and it's going to first off ask you, okay, how do we want this thing to interact? So we're going to change the on screen to after delay, and I'm going to change the after delay to 1 millisecond. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that I select Smart Animate, because the cool thing about Smart Animate, just a quick thing, just a quick little side note. Smart Animate is kind of how it infuses. So whenever you use Smart Animate, and you'll see if you follow me on YouTube with my previous videos, doing prototypes in Figma, Smart Animate is great because it kind of smoothly transitions between different elements. Okay, we have Smart Animate, and I want to make sure I select ease in and ease out. And we do want that kind of animation duration to be about 10 seconds, give or take. We can always play around with it. Okay, so that is the first one. Now we're going to do the second one. So second screen to third screen. We are going to do the same. It's going to be after delay. We're going to set 1 millisecond. Everything looks good. It's ease in, ease out, and Smart Animate. Now we're going to do the third one. So we're going to drag it to the fourth screen. Same thing, we're going to do after delay. I just want to make this one 1 millisecond. Smart Animate, in, out, 10 seconds. Perfect. The last step here is that we do want to take our fourth screen and we want to route it back to our first screen. Same thing, after delay, 1 millisecond, everything else looks good. Okay, so let's quickly test this. Let's see how it looks like. I'm going to select the main screen. I'm just going to close all the tabs that I have. We're just going to hit the little play button and see what's happening. Here you can see we have our animation. So it's smoothly kind of transitioning, and it kind of feels a little too fast for me. So we definitely want to fine tune that, because that transition, specifically that to screen 2 and screen 3, which is right about here, that kind of feels a little too fast for me. So we definitely want to play around with it. So going back to our design, the way that we can modify this is going to our kind of first animation that we have, which is this one right here. And I'm just going to zoom in just so it's easier to kind of select it. We can zoom out again. I'm just going to drag this guy up, and let's make this, let's try 20 seconds. Let's see how that will do, or how that will go. And I'm going to do that for all of them. So I'm going to change all of them to 20 seconds, because the whole idea here is I don't want the animation to go too fast, specifically because when we create that header slider or that like homepage slider, we don't want the background to kind of distract the user from everything or anything else of the website itself. Okay, just want to change this one to 20 seconds as well. Okay, so let's hit play. Now you're going to notice when you do changes like this, it does sometimes take some time for it to adjust, but I can already see this is already looking good. It's a very smooth kind of transition. The animation is nice and slow, and it's moving through our mesh gradient. This right here, I feel like it's a little too fast, but again, you can always play around with it. You can always fine tune it to exactly what you like. Okay, so now that we've created our 4 screens or our 4 frames, the next step here is we got to add our content, and we do need to add our navigation. So here's one little caveat, or one little thing that you're going to run into, is we want to make sure that each and every screen is consistent, because the animation itself is transitioning from frame to frame to frame. So when you look on the artboard here, it's literally transitioning from main screen, second screen, third, fourth screen. And so when we add content into these screens, it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be one space where we can constantly modify it. So let me show you what I mean. First things first, we're going to go to navigation. We are going to take this right here, and you'll notice that in the assets, I already created a component of it. Now that we have it right here, the components, the beauty of this is as we're going to drop this into the frames, you're going to notice that if we make any changes here, it's going to apply to all those frames, which is super important. Okay. So with that said, let's go to the main screen. First things first, I want to get out a prototype, go back to design, and I want to activate auto layout. Now, when you activate auto layout, it is going to mess about with our blobs. So we want to take this and we want to make it an absolute position. So now that it's absolute, we can move it again to where I want it, or where we want it, which is about there. And I'm going to go and do the same for the rest of them. We are going to go and select auto layout. We are going to go with absolute positioning. And same with our third screen. We're going to take third screen right here, activate auto layout. We're going to select blobs, and we are going to make sure that it is what it was originally. Full screen, auto layout, and last one, we're going to go and activate that absolute position. Now, you could theoretically have done this beforehand, but there's a specific reason why I didn't do that. I wanted you to see what kind of obstacle you can run into. Okay, so now that we've activated auto layout, there's a reason I'm doing an auto layout. It's just going to make life so much easier. I'm going to select the main screen and we're going to drop in our assets. We're going to drop it in right here. I'm going to do the same for the second screen, drop it in right there. Third screen, drop it in, and fourth screen, drop it in. Okay, now we're going to do the same with this one as well. So selecting main screen, drop it in, selecting second screen, we're going to drop that in right there. Third screen, same thing, drop it in. And once that's done, full screen, that's the last one. So now that we have our items in there, all right, so now that we have our items in there, we can just do a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to select main screen, go back to the layers. And when we look at the layers, a couple of things, we can see it's right here, which is all good. But there's a few things we do need to do. So first thing, I'm going to select the blobs and I'm going to send it to the back. So everything goes to the back. And I'm going to do the same for second, third, and fourth screen as well. So I'm going to go and select second screen, click on the blobs, send it to the back. If you don't send it to the back, that was the full screen, by the way. If you don't send items to the back, you would definitely run into some issues. I want to make sure that blobs are definitely in the back side of our frame and not in the front, not that it overlays anything. Okay, so now with that done, let's start with the first screen. First off, I want to take this right here and we want to select header. And I want to make sure that header has a full content right here, so it stretches the entire thing. I also am just going to add a little bit of padding left and right. So I'm going to add a little bit of a 25 there. And the height, we're going to make sure that it's set to hug. Now that that's done, we can click on our main screen and I'm going to add 330 as a spacing. And last, I am going to add 48 here. Because I added 48, you know what? Let's get rid of the spacing or the padding that I have on those items or on the header navigation for that matter. Okay, so now I can see that I have our kind of ultimate mesh gradient. So that's the slider kind of content. One last thing I do want to do though is just add a bit of padding top bottom as well. And I feel like 48 might be too much. So let's change that 48 to 25. That looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go and apply this to the rest of them as well. So I'm going to go for 330, are going to go for 48 and 25 on that padding there, and take this and make sure that it fills the content. That looks good. I'm going to do the third screen as well. We are going to go for 330. We are going to go for 48 padding sides and 25 padding top bottom. Now, there's a couple of things here that's kind of doesn't look really good. So let's see what's going on. So I'm clicking on the third screen and I can see it's an auto layout orientation. So we want to make sure that it's vertical. The second thing is let's just take this and send it to the back again. We are going to move this to the top. Now that looks a lot better. We just want to make it sure that the kind of width is set to full. That looks good. All right, let's move on to the fourth one, which is the last one. We are going to go for 330. We are going to go for 48 and 25. Perfect. Last step here is just want to make sure that full is set right there. Okay, so now with that all done, when we go to the little play button, we'll give it a sec. Again, you'll notice that it takes some time to kind of apply. Sometimes we do need to go and replay everything, which in this case, I think it is. Oh, there it goes. It updated everything. So now you can see we have everything here. We have full screens. We have our header and we have our content in our 4 screens. And you can see that the animation is taking place as well. So this is pretty cool and also really awesome. Okay, now one thing you might ask is, okay, but let's say I want to change my heading. I don't want to change it all at all 4 spaces or all 4 frames. Well, that's exactly why we're using assets. So you'll see that if I were to go and change, maybe go ultimate high quality, you will notice that it applied it to all 4 frames. Okay, so last thing before we wrap this up, I just quickly want to go and add a bit of border radius to our frames itself. So I'm just going to select all of them. We are going to change it to 25. It just looks a little better. So when we have a look at it again, it takes a second to update everything. But once it updates, you'll see that we have that kind of border radius, which looks really, really cool. And there you can see we do have our beautiful looking gradient effect. So one little thing I want to show you that's a cool little kind of bonus add to this video is I want to show you how to add that beautiful looking shadow that I have on this specific heading. So you won't probably see it if you don't focus on it, but you can see right there, I have kind of a gradient effect. So let's go and add it to this logo right here. So I'm going to go back to the design, and it's a cool little plugin that I use. So again, I'm going to modify the actual asset that I have, not the other items. I am going to use Shadow Maker. And when I do that, I am going to navigate to here because that's a dark background. You're not going to be able to see this, but now we can kind of move this to about there. I want to bring in the opacity, maybe bring in the distance or decrease the distance, just really playing around with this until we can get something that looks really cool. So I'm going to go for 100% first. So let's put that opacity to 1. Just want to adjust our distance just a tiny bit. And now we can decrease the opacity just to kind of finish it off a little bit. Maybe decrease the layers as well, just a tiny bit there. And there we go. That looks pretty cool. Go back to our prototype, give it a second, and we're going to see our shadow kind of jumping in or coming in after a second or two. Okay, so before we finish this video, I have a question for you, and drop it in the comments below. My question is, would you ever use this feature? And secondly, do you think that there's a better way of doing this? Okay, so with that, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. I do post videos like this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's all about design, mobile design, web development, and mobile development. And with that, thanks for watching.